But just to kind of summarize, just a teeny tiny bit, we've looked at various empires in this chapter. Okay, we started off with Assyria, and then we briefly looked at the Chaldeans. Sometimes they're also called the New Babylonians. Okay, and then of course we spent like the last two classes looking at the Persians. Now, these are more of what people think when they think of an empire, because different lands, different people, you know, like this huge, especially the Persians, this huge ass thing of land and territory. Okay, and then we finished off yesterday talking about Greece. Now, the Greeks we consider them a type of empire, especially when we start talking about Alexander the Great, but not in the same sense as these guys, because the Greeks were more of a cultural thing, all right? Because remember, each of the Greek city-states were all independent from each other. They had different forms of government. They had different lifestyles. They had different things that they did, but and this will be a question, what were the two things that they all had in common, despite all of these differences? Louder. Language, yes, so they can hear you, all right? So number one is language. And what was the second thing? Was that religion? Yes. They all worshiped the same gods, okay? And so, yeah, this is an important part of a group's culture, you know, their language, their religion. I didn't get into it as much, but they had similar customs, you know. They all participated in the Olympics every 4 years, you know, all of that stuff, okay? So they were more of a cultural thing. Now we're going to look at two empires that, once again, not physical, not people-y, not any of that, okay? And not necessarily cultural, all right? The first one we're going to look at is the Phoenicians, okay? And they established a trading empire or a commercial empire, okay? Now, who are the Phoenicians? What are they all about, okay? If you look at other sources or if you look at other records, especially the Judeo-Christian ones, they're known as the Canaanites, okay? Although more properly, we know them as the Phoenicians, okay? They lived in the area of modern-day Lebanon, so still within the confines of what today we would call Palestine, but they were north of the modern-day country of Israel, okay? Now, the word Phoenician, okay, comes from the Greeks, okay? And it referred to them, they called them the purple people, okay? Now, this has nothing to do with, I don't know, their hair or their skin color or whatever. But it has to do with the fact that one of the things that the Phoenicians traded and sold was a purple dye, okay? And this made them very wealthy.
Do you know what the purple dye came from? Like what natural?
I'm going to assume indigo, all right, the plant, because that's typically where people have gotten it. But I may have to look it up just to be sure. But like later on when Europeans begin to produce purple dyes, they get it from indigo, okay? Does anyone know what the importance of purple is? Jose?
It's for a higher class of the rich, basically.
Yeah, purple was typically only worn by higher class people or by the ruling class, okay? And so, average people, no offense, you know, you're both black. All right, you know, we just wear common, yeah, you too. Just, you know, regular clothes, just black, you know, very, very plain colors, all right? But if you wanted to be considered high class, high status, yes, you would wear purple, okay?
Did they ever use the dyes to like dye their hair?
No, that comes later. mean, they would like paint their faces, so you would have it on your face and on your body, but hair dyeing is later on in history. Okay, sorry, no, yours is blue, not purple. All right, but yeah, purple was considered the color of royalty, and so once the Phoenicians realized this, they're like that people were obsessed with having purple clothes. They're going to sell this dye to people so that, yes, you too can now wear purple, all right? And people will think that you're upper class, that you're rich, that you're whatever, okay? Never, I guess, doubt the power of commercialism. Even back then, you have to wear the right name or the right color in this instance, okay? So yes, purple, all right, was it. Now, who were the Phoenicians? Who were the Canaanites? It was basically, and this is why we bring up the Sea Peoples. I mentioned them in the last class because some of the Sea People who just settled down in the area basically intermarried with the locals, and that's who the Phoenicians were. Okay, and as I mentioned, theirs was a trading empire. It was a commercial empire. They didn't care about conquering territory. They just cared about making money. All right, and what would bring them the most money? Well, obviously this purple dye, okay, number one. Number two, it's not so much today, just because it's been over 1,000 years, but once upon a time, this area of Lebanon was filled with cedar forests. Okay, and they realized that yes, people loved cedar wood, not just for boats, but for other things. So they became master woodworkers, and and of course, cedar being kind of a special wood, kind of exotic. Okay, yes, they would sell it. Now, remember that back then, with a couple of exceptions, most people are wearing clothes made out of either animal skin or wool. Okay? Does anyone know the importance of cedar and wool? Okay, over the summer, if you have anything wool, all right, just leave it out, whatever. It'll get eaten by moths. All right? You guys are like, yes, it will. Yes, that's why you get holes in wool or cashmere stuff. But if you put it either in a cedar box or you put little cedar, pieces within it, it keeps the moths away. All right? And so, the Phoenicians caught on to this. It's like, hey, you want to wear that nice hoodie that's made out of wool next winter? All right, well, buy my special Phoenician box. All right, it's made out of cedar. It will preserve it for years and years. Okay? Now, because they were interested in trade, and I'll show you a map in a minute as to where they were located, they used this cedar to make boats, and with those boats, they went out into the ocean and not only bought and sold and traded and explored and, did the whole thing. Okay, throughout the Mediterranean, you really couldn't go anywhere at its height without, finding a Phoenician trading outpost. Okay, we have found Phoenician ruins as far west as Morocco. So they actually made it to the Atlantic Ocean. All right, after that, they're like, oh, fuck no, it's scary out there. Okay, plus they already had, this whole network established. Okay, so this is the map. All right, the Phoenicians start off right here. Okay, and it's not that they conquered all of this, but those are the areas where you could find Phoenician colonies and Phoenician outposts. Okay, some of the bigger ones, like Carthage, eventually become their own city, and long after the Phoenicians have been conquered, Carthage becomes its own empire, but that's like 500-600 years later. Okay, but basically, and where are you? There you are. But basically, they traded with people way out onto the edge of the Atlantic, which today we think, okay, whatever, Santos, so they made it way out there. But no, back then, it was a pretty big deal, okay? And of course, they had trading relationships with all of the Greek city-states, with Egypt, with the Persians, all right, with, various cities in Italy. So everybody knew who the Phoenicians were. Okay. Oh, I got ahead of myself. All right. They established trading colonies, like I said, various outposts throughout the Mediterranean. One of them, the city of Carthage, okay, it eventually becomes a very important city. They create their own physical empire, and they're actually Rome's greatest rival for about 150 years. Eventually, Carthage is destroyed by the Romans, and the Romans conquer them. All right, but the fact that this city lasted like hundreds of years after the Phoenicians, disappeared, yeah, all right. Obviously, they left a pretty important legacy. Okay, now some of the things that we know the Phoenicians traded in. All right. Obviously, timber, because they cut down their own forests to sell various cedar stuff. We already know about the purple dye. And it wasn't just purple, that's just what they were famous for. But obviously, if you can make purple dye, you can make other colors. So, once again, no offense, instead of just having to wear black clothing, don't worry, oh no, I didn't wear any black today. I was going to say, I usually wear black too. All right. Yeah, today I went with dark blue.
The glasses.
Okay, dark blue. All right, close enough. Yours is dark blue. No.
Mine's black.
Oh, never mind. Okay, yeah, I need my eyes checked. All right, but yes, they gave, other colors. Besides purple, one of the more popular ones as well, and thank you, Mahalia, is like the reddish. All right, you too, Jack, kind of like the burgundy reddish color. All right, because once again, back then, there wasn't a lot of choice as far as colors went when it came to clothing. Okay, they were able to find people who made glass, so they were able to obviously bring glass. All right, wine. When they reach Italy, they find the people there have discovered wine. Various textiles, copper. What do we use copper again for? Bronze, yeah. Now, not everyone has switched over to iron, all right? And so they are still able to make, some sales in copper. Obviously, once iron really took hold, that went away. And then finally, ivory, okay? Because they had colonies all up and down northern Africa, and they even were able to head farther south. First off, where do we get ivory from? Yeah, it's the elephant tusks, elephant teeth. All right, and it's sad because people typically kill the whole elephant and just take the tusk, and elephants are came pretty close to extinction. But please, I promise I'm not a horrible person. I've actually seen stuff made out of ivory, and it is really beautiful. Yes, I know. Tusks belong on elephants.
To be ethically sourced.
I don't think there's a way to ethically source ivory. Okay, after they're dead, maybe. Yes, but I don't think this one was. I've seen different cups made out of ivory. I've seen sword handles made out of ivory. Oh, it's beautiful. They used to make piano keys out of ivory, like really, really old pianos. All right, so.
Did you know that elephants, they look at humans how we look at puppies and kittens?
Yeah.
So that's pretty sad.
They think we're cute, and then suddenly, boom, you're dead and give your teeth, type of thing. Yeah, I know. Which is why it's illegal to trade in ivory now, even if it's humanely sourced from a dead elephant. It's just illegal all the way around. And honestly, I actually saw all this stuff in South America, where regulations are a bit more relaxed on certain things. Like, I've never seen ivory here in the States, but definitely in South America. But anyways, all right, the Phoenicians did all of this. Now, despite this, okay, the Phoenicians gave us something that's way more important, all right? And that is an alphabet, okay? Now, we've had writing for a couple thousand years now, okay? But the writing was what we call pictographic or ideographic, where, you draw a picture and that represents an idea, okay? Once again, my poor man's emoji here. All right, think of emojis. So this represents an idea, Okay, sometimes, and I know like I can't draw an owl, so I'm going to draw like a fish, okay, like for hieroglyphics. Sometimes the drawing would represent a sound, and they would combine these things, okay? Now, the problem with this is obviously, and just look at your, emojis on your phone. I mean, there are, hundreds upon hundreds, because you can have the happy face, you can have the like a cross face, you can have the sad face, you can have the pursed lips, you can, and each one can, I still don't know what that one means. Like what, are you kissing? Are you just, making your lips that way? I don't know. Okay, someone sends me that one, I'm like, this person's nuts. All right, blocked. But in this case, though, what the Phoenicians did is they came up with symbols, and each symbol would represent a sound. When you combine the symbols, you get words. Okay? There's a stick with two bellies. There is a big circle, and there is a long stick diagonally intersected by half a stick. Okay? That first symbol goes ba. The second symbol goes o, and the third symbol is u, something like that. You put them all together and you get roy. Okay? And so by doing this, okay, you could make words. All right? The Phoenicians had 22 symbols. Today we call them letters. How many symbols are in the English alphabet? 26. All right? You can combine these 26 symbols into any kinds of combinations. If you're a Spanish speaker, there's 27. Okay? You can combine them into any form and get words. Okay? A lot easier to remember 26 than to try to figure out what the pursed lip emoji actually means.
Actually, they have 27 letters. The little cursive and symbol, that used to be not that letter.
Yeah, English used to have a lot more things like that one, and then there's one with the A and the E combined. That used to be a letter, but little by little we've evolved, so there used to be more. Okay. So yeah. Now this system of writing is known as phonetics. Guess why we call it phonetics? Who gave it to us? Phoenicians. Okay, and this was one of Mr. Santos's areas of study in graduate school. Phonetics is the study of words and how they're pronounced and how you make sounds and put them together. Okay, and so in this case, this becomes a much easier system of writing because more people could actually learn it. Once again, there's only 22 symbols you have to remember. Okay, as opposed to the hundreds, or if you take like some Asian languages, thousands of symbols that you have to remember. Just 22. And then you just have to remember the combinations that they go in. All right, which we're talking about back then, there weren't that many. Okay, and so little by little, the average person can now keep track of things. You don't need scribes as often. All right. And this is actually the way pretty much most Western languages and even Eastern languages like Russian and Greek and Ukrainian, they use a different system, but it functions the same way. Tori.
How did they come up with how the letters work? And then you just explain it.
They just made them up. I mean, like, why is a B a B, and if it's a lowercase b, actually, if you flip it around, it's a D, and then if you turn it upside down, it's a Q, and then if you flip that around, it's a P. Honestly, I don't know. I'd have to research that more, but people just came up with, okay, these are the things. Now, this was the 22-letter Phoenician alphabet, okay? What you see in, I'm going to say Latin letters, because that's actually what it is. What you see in Latin letters is the closest approximation to an English sound today, to the way we would do it. Okay, so like this one that looks kind of like a weird 4 almost, or no, a red flag. All right, a little flag, the flag emoji. All right, I know you've seen the red flag emoji. All right.
Tell me you don't see red flag sentence?
That's right, red flag right there. I see them everywhere. Probably why I'm still single. It's like the R, like what today we would do that. Okay. This thing is like our regular S. An S with a little happy face on top is, if you're Bosnian, it's almost like the sound, like an S, but with almost you're making a CH with your mouth. It's weird to reproduce. Okay. So yeah. Now, one of the things about ancient languages, and every now and then I'll have students look, so please look. What's missing? Oh, yes, vowels. Most older languages like Hebrew, Aramaic, Phoenician, all of it, didn't have vowels. Even today, Hebrew doesn't have vowels. Okay, you just kind of, you slur your way through it. Okay, you kind of make whatever sound comes out. Okay, so yeah, this is basically their greatest contribution to history, because with the exception of certain Asian languages, this is the system everybody uses. Even if you're, like I said, even if you're Russian and you use they use the Cyrillic alphabet, it's still the same thing. You're plugging in these symbols that represent a sound, and you put them all together, and you end up with words. Okay, so it's a much easier system than before. All right. Questions on the Phoenicians? All right. So even though they were a trading empire, even though that was their thing, even though they established colonies and a city that would later on be Rome's greatest rival, okay, the alphabet is their greatest gift to us. Okay, so I guess you could say that could also, because like I said, pretty much, every Western language is based on the same alphabet. So yeah, all right, their empire continues. Okay, now we're going to look at a religious empire. Okay, and that is the ancient Israelites. Okay, now they also had kind of a slight physical empire. All right, but mostly their effect has to do with their religion. All right, so just to give you a little bit of background, okay, this isn't Sunday school, so I can't go through the whole thing, but the Israelites are descended from a man named Abraham. Okay, Abraham was a Mesopotamian. Okay, so it all goes back to Mesopotamia. He lived in the city of Ur. During one of the many droughts, horrible weather periods, he leaves Ur and he moves to the area that's just south of modern-day Lebanon. So basically, the modern-day country of Israel. All right, and there he settles. He's able to find adequate land. Okay, and so we move from generation to generation. Okay, and eventually his descendants, okay, move to Egypt because, once again, the area experiences more environmental catastrophes. And once they're in Egypt, after a few generations there, they are enslaved. The Egyptians put them in slavery. Okay? At some point during this time, a man named Moses rises up, and he becomes the leader of the Israelites, and he basically guides them out of Egypt. And somewhere between the year 1200 and 1000, all right, the Israelites return to this area that they call Israel. All right? Now, they do have to fight the local people, okay? They do have to conquer, and they do have to, do all of this. But eventually, they establish their kingdom, okay, which is known as Israel. All right, their capital city is the city of Jerusalem. So Jerusalem has been around for a long time. And not their first king, their second king is a man named King David. Okay? This is the same David from David and Goliath. He did that when he was 14, and then when he grows up, he becomes king of Israel. All right? Now, he dies, like everybody else does. Okay? And his oldest son, a man named Solomon, he takes over. He becomes the king. Okay? Now, Solomon is well known in history because, according to historians, he was blessed with wisdom. Okay, he's the whole example of cut the baby in half. Okay, so people came to him because he was the king and because he was wise. And so at one point, when the story goes, is that two women come to him. Okay. And apparently both of them had just given birth, but one of them, her baby had died. And so apparently she kidnaps the baby from another woman and says, this baby's mine. And the first woman's like, no, she kidnapped my baby. The baby's mine. Okay? There's really no way to prove whose baby is who. There's no DNA test back then.
No Jerry Springer.
Okay, no Jerry Springer test. There's no, nowadays, if you have a baby in the hospital, they put a little tag on it so that it matches, your tag mom and dad, all that stuff. So Solomon says, you know what? I have an equitable solution. Cut the baby in half, and each woman can get half a baby. All right? And that way we satisfy everyone. Okay? One woman says, no, don't cut the baby. Just give it to her. All right? Let her have it. Please just don't hurt the baby. And the woman who had kidnapped the baby goes, yeah, I'll take it then. All right? And then Solomon says, aha, you're the thief. You're the kidnapper, sorry. Because only the real mother would rather give away her baby than see it die. Okay? Whereas, since you're not the mother, you don't care, as long as you get the baby. All right? So that's supposedly like Solomon's wisdom, He could do that kind of stuff. All right? Whether that's true or not, okay? But the things that are true, that we do have from the historical records. Number one, because the Israelites were religious, and I'll talk about their religion in a minute, Solomon decides to build a temple to their God. Okay? Temples cost money, though, but Solomon didn't care. Okay? In addition, Solomon wants Israel to be an empire similar to these. And so when it comes to territory, the Israelites actually conquer quite a bit. And under Solomon, they reach their greatest peak. They extend throughout the area. Okay? In addition to a temple, Solomon's like, you know what, I'm the king. And, there were two kings before him. And he's just like, they lived in tents. They lived in whatever. No, kings need palaces. They need, gold and all this cool stuff. So he starts building himself a royal palace. All right? In addition to conquering other lands, okay, remember that during this time, marriage wasn't necessarily for love. You see someone and you fall in love and you get married and all that shit. Sorry, all that stuff. All right? But marriages were more of a financial arrangement. When it came to politics, it was a political arrangement. Okay? And so, areas that he conquered, he would marry local princesses, so that, the alliance between Israel and those areas was strengthened. Solomon had over 700 wives. Okay, that's the other thing you say about wives.
My brothers are named after David and Solomon.
Okay.
And my brother David, he's very, not stiff, but he's very serious. And then my brother Solomon, he's exactly how you described Solomon. He would have.
He likes ladies.
Yeah. He's only 6. He's only 7. He just turned 7 yesterday. But yeah,
He's 7 and he's already risen to ladies.
yeah, he talks about like he had already 5 girlfriends.
Holy crap. Well, he's on his way to 700, only 695 more. All right, type of thing. Yes. Now some people, like I've had students respond like, oh, gross, or whatever. And I'm like, think about it. If you're one of his 700 wives, you might only see him like every other year. Like type of thing.
Imagine if it was that rule where you have to treat all your wives equally.
Yeah,
How?
that was only Persia. Okay, the Israelites didn't care. But, okay, kind of leads to the next point, okay? Because one, in order to build a temple, you need money. In order to build a palace, you need money. In order to support 700 baby mamas, you need money, okay? And he's the king. And what's the easiest way for a government to raise money? Taxes. So the Israelites had super high taxes because he's building himself a giant palace. Okay, we get the temple, all right, because everybody was religious. But seriously, why are we paying for all of his wives? Type of thing. It's not like we get to enjoy them. Like he's leaving no women for the average person. So like, what the hell? And so yes, the people were angry. They were upset that their king is spending all this money on things that were only for himself. Okay, and so at some point Solomon dies. Okay. And what happens is that Israel splits in half, the kingdom of Israel, okay? Because obviously the heir is one of Solomon's sons, and he basically says, I'm going to keep doing what my dad did. I mean, like, under my dad, Israel is one of the most powerful countries here in this area. And so the people that did not follow Solomon's son, okay, it becomes known, in some textbooks, it'll be called the Northern Kingdom, but it keeps the name Israel, all right? And it actually lasts until 721 BCE, all right? Israel is conquered by the Assyrians, all right? Remember the Assyrians, okay? And so most of the Israelites are taken from Israel to Assyria, to Mesopotamia, to other parts. Remember, the Assyrians would forcibly integrate you into their culture and society. And so, yes, various Israelites were married into Assyrian families, so that after 2 or 3 generations, these Israelites have literally completely disappeared. All right? Now, and I think I mentioned this before, if you've studied religion or if you were raised religious, when people talk about the lost tribes of Israel, these are the people they're talking about. And I remember when I was a little Santos and being taught this stuff, I was like, dude, how do you get lost? Just, use a compass, find your way back. But in this case, it wasn't necessarily that, it's that they're lost to history. The Assyrians did a pretty good job of doing that. Okay? Yes?
I don't remember what it was, but it was like a religious like relic that was in King Solomon's temple, or supposedly in King Solomon's temple.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think it's real. But
But
then again, I just watched Indiana Jones, like, the other day. Hence the hat.
I love Indiana Jones.
But anyways, okay. The Southern Kingdom becomes known as the Kingdom of Judah. And this is where you get the name Jew or Jewish from Judah. That's why they're known as the Jewish people. And it actually lasts about 150 years longer, okay? Eventually, though, the Chaldeans, okay, the New Babylonians, the people that conquered Assyria, also conquer the Southern Kingdom, and the people from the Southern Kingdom are taken to Babylon, okay? If you've ever read the stories of like Daniel in the lion's den and other things like that, all of that happens in Babylon. He's one of the many prisoners that is taken from Judah to, the Chaldean homeland. Okay? Now, along come the Persians, and they conquer all of this, okay, in 539, and Cyrus, being the liberator that he, projected himself to be, tells the Jews you can go back to your kingdom. You can go back to where you're from. I'll give you all the means you need, and I'll even give you money so you can rebuild this Temple of Solomon that was destroyed during these various conquests. Okay? So, that is the history of the Israelites. Now, why, Santos? Why are you giving me this lesson that the nuns taught me in Catholic school? All right, well, before we get to that, okay, this was the kingdom of Israel physically, okay? This brown area was the area that the Israelites first conquered when they came from Egypt, and it was under their very first king, a man named Saul, all right? After Saul died, David became king, and all of the purple area, okay, is area that David conquered and Solomon conquered, okay? And then the green area is stuff that Solomon on his own conquered, okay? So that by the time Solomon becomes king, all right, it goes all the way to the Euphrates River, all right? So it was a pretty, not as big as Persia, not as big as Assyria, but it was a pretty good-sized empire, okay? They never called it an empire, though. Now, why, Santos? Well, here we go. The Israelites were different from every other group that existed during this time, because the Israelites were the first monotheists, okay? What is monotheism again?
One God.
One God, belief in just one God, as opposed to every other group that existed. The Persians, Zoroastrianism, that comes a couple hundred years later, all right? They're the second group of monotheists, but for now, it's just the Israelites, okay? They're the first group to exclusively practice monotheism, okay? According to them, there was one God, and that's it, all right? And that God's name is Yahweh. All right? Now, remember those ancient alphabets have no vowels. Okay, so it's pronounced Yahweh. All right? In English, it's transliterated into the word Jehovah. Okay? So that was the God. That's it. No one else exists. Okay? Now, throughout their history, the Israelites were sent various prophets to warn the people, to tell them, be good, or else God will destroy you, be good, or else you're going to hell, all right? Here's all the rules that God wants you to follow. Everything else that you may see or hear or encounter is fake. There's only one God, and that's the one you have to follow, okay? This is important, all right, even if you're not, one of these religions, because, I'm sure pretty much everyone in this room, 3 of the world's major religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, can all trace their roots to the ancient Israelite religion. Okay? Beyond that, there's other religious groups, but those are like the big 3. Okay? So obviously the effect is 3,000-4,000 years later, here we are. Okay? In addition, even other groups, if you want to call them, the kooky religions. The one I think of, and if you don't, I always have students not believe me, so go ahead and Google. All right, Pastafarianism. All right, their god, and there's only one, is the flying spaghetti monster. Okay, and yes, we pray to thy noodly appendages. All right, because it's spaghetti.
Legally, you are a pasta street.
Yes, that was in Oregon. This lady went to get her driver's license, and she wore a colander, a spaghetti strainer, on her head, and they were trying to get her to take it off, and she was like, no, it's part of my religion. Like, would you tell a Muslim to take off their hijab, or would you tell a Christian to take off their cross? This is a part of my religion. She won the case. They took it to the Oregon Supreme Court, because Pastafarianism is considered an actual religion. It's a monotheistic one, though. Okay? And for those of you that may like profess atheism or agnosticism, okay, I often tell people, like, when you swear or when you curse, you say, oh, you know, whatever, like, God damn it. Why don't you say God's damn it? Yeah, monotheism affects you too. All right.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, why not, Apollo? Why not one of the other gods?
Because that's how you were raised, to say those other
Yeah.
things.
So, yes, their effect, even amongst people that don't believe, is still there. Olivia's like, that's it. I actually have a student that after that started saying God's damn it to everything. And I was just like, whoa, okay. It's not just this God, it's all of them are going to damn things, okay? So no matter what your religious persuasion, okay? I'm going to stop right here, and we will go to, I know we're early.